Okay, right now we're going to be diving into one of the most fascinating frontiers of alternative protein, precision fermentation and the role of heme proteins in making plant-based meat more authentic. I'm joined by Hermes and Pierre from Paleo, a company pioneering in this space. Hermes, Pierre, thank you for both being here.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Now, before we get into the science, let's just start with a little bit of background. Could you both introduce yourselves as well as your roles at Paleo? Hermes, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So my name is Hermes Sanctorum. I'm co-founder and CEO of Paleo. And Paleo just about almost 5 years now. So I'm CEO since 2020.
Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Pierre Donck. Joined Paleo beginning of 2024. I joined as Chief Business Officer. So very happy to be in that position to support the mission of Paleo.
Mhm. Now, speaking of that mission, every company has an origin story that says a lot about why it exists. So what was the original inspiration behind founding Paleo, and what problem were you trying to solve?
Yeah, I get that question quite often. I must say it's not easy to reconstruct that whole story. But basically, my core mission from like when I was really, really small is about the battle against animal suffering. So I've been doing that through all my professional life. I was a member of parliament and senator in Belgium. So I worked on animal welfare, sustainability, food transition. And I'm really proud of what I did back then on legislation. But I must confess, I was getting a bit frustrated on the lack of speed, the lack of scale, and also, after all, regulation is quite limited. I mean, when you think of an animal in a cage, you can enlarge the cage, but it's still a cage, right? So when I thought of like, how can you really transform that system from something totally animal-based to something animal-free, but still providing the real meat experience to consumers. And that's what it's about. And then we came to our magic ingredient, myoglobins.
Of course, missions can evolve as markets change and companies grow. How would you describe Paleo's mission today? Has it evolved at all since those early days, Hermes?
I think it's still quite solid. The mission hasn't changed. We also hire people that really align with our mission. We think that's very important. But at the same time, I think our scope has even become more broad in the sense that we don't only want to make ingredients for plant-based meats, but there are way more animal compounds that should be replaced by an identical but animal-free version. So we are currently developing our company more towards a platform, basically, to really deal with all kind of animal-based compounds that should be replaced with an animal-free version.
Mhm. And looking back, there's often key turning points that really shape a company's trajectory. What were some of the most important moments that shaped Paleo's direction?
Yeah, I can think of a few, to be honest. I remember the very, very first time that we were able to make our myoglobin not just animal free, of course, through fermentation, but also free of GMO. So we had to make sure that technically that the yeast would release the myoglobin to its environment. So you would be able to separate yeast from the molecule, and we would have a pure myoglobin in the end without any GMO, without any recombinant DNA. At first, we didn't know whether it would work or not. And I remember that first picture. I was abroad, and my chief science officer at that time sent me the picture. It works, and it was like really bloody red. And yeah, of course, that I will remember for the rest of my life, I'm sure.
Mhm. Let's shift to the heart of what you do, myoglobin. So I'm going to ask a really silly question now. What exactly is it, and why is it such a game changer for plant-based meats?
Yeah, myoglobin is a molecule naturally occurring in meat and fish. And it's not just a random molecule, it's really a key molecule that provides color to meats. Taste contributes greatly to taste in meat and also adds to nutritional value, especially on iron.
So iron is present in myoglobin in a heme iron form. So those are three of, you can imagine that also for the industry, those are three very important characteristics. So if you make that identical myoglobin through fermentation and you add it to a plant-based meat, well, then it contributes to meat color, to meat taste, and also meat nutritional value. And indeed, we see it in our labs and also during trials with commercial partners. The meat experience is really very nearby when you add our myoglobins to a plant-based meat.
Mhm. Now, I know from our prep calls that you've gathered some interesting consumer insights recently across the USA, UK, and Germany. What did you learn about what consumers really want in plant-based meat?
Yeah, so yes, that's of course a valid point, because at Paleo we first of all look at the technology and ingredients. To what was mentioned by Hermes, we look into taste, color, and also nutrition. Of course, we need to make sure that consumers are also looking for that. So based on this, we've done consumer research with a partner here in Belgium, where we focused on the US, Germany, and the UK, which is still nowadays the big markets for plant-based alternatives. And when we look at this, it's really the importance is about mimicking or imitating the meat experience. And when you say the meat experience, it goes, of course, we look at taste, we look at the smell, and so the aroma, the color transition, and of course also texture. These are key elements that come up. And from that these consumer insights, we could see that, of course, taste is a key element, which is also one of the key arguments for using myoglobin and plant-based alternatives. Looking into nutrition, because very often from consumers, we know that people that are actually looking for plant-based alternatives are more health conscious, which means that they're really looking for added benefits for actually the products that they're actually going to buy. And for that reason, when we mentioned it's a source of bioavailable iron, the myoglobin, this is actually going into the direction what actually consumers want. And to continue with, let's say, the health aspects that are important for consumers, to what was mentioned before, the free of GMO aspect is also key. And we know that if you look specifically in the US, there is actually also a higher willingness to pay more if we can guarantee that the products are free of GMO. So all this two combined makes that myoglobin has really a reason for existence and is actually a part of the puzzle that is important to bring nice products to consumers.
Mhm. So connecting those dots, it sounds like myoglobin has a direct role on meeting those expectations. Hermes, how does the presence of heme and specifically myoglobin help meet those expectations?
So we strongly believe that in order to make plant-based meats really attractive to consumers, it really needs to give the meat experience, right? And that is confirmed also by our own research, as Pierre was mentioning. And that's exactly what it's doing. So when you add myoglobin to a plant-based meat, when it's raw, it becomes red, of course, due to the myoglobin. When you cook it, it becomes caramelized brown. And that's exactly part of the meat experience, right? When you fry something, first it's red and then it becomes brown. The myoglobin also participates in the chemical reactions during cooking. And that's why you start having these notes of metallic taste, grilled meat notes. That's really due to the addition of the myoglobin, even in a plant-based meat matrix. And again, last but not least, nutritional value. I'm a vegetarian myself. I'm very convinced of the health benefits of a plant-based diet, but I must confess, my only concern, for instance, for my children, is iron intake, because iron is everywhere in plants as well, but it's not in a way that it's easily absorbed by the human body. So for nutritional reasons, eating meat, the only reason to do that is in fact for iron. But in fact, we solve that issue by adding a yeast fermented myoglobin to a plant-based meat.
Just wondering, Hermes, are you seeing any differences in consumer awareness of heme or myoglobin between Europe and the USA?
There are differences. It's not a coincidence that as a European company, we focus not just on animal free, but also free of GMO. That's because regulations in European Union are very, very strict for GMO. And consumers are also very, yeah, they're really not into GMO products. You don't find it even much in retail, for instance. That's different in US. So that's why we really make a product that fits standards of EU consumers. That being said, we also see, thanks to our research, but also other studies, that also a US consumer on average is in fact interested in a free of GMO products. So we see that 84% of US consumers find it important according to our study. And at the same time, there's 71% that is even willing to pay more for a free of GMO product. So you see that even in the US, there is it's an attractive USP, the GMO free or free of GMO aspect of products.
And Pierre, what do you say to people who are still skeptical of precision fermentation derived ingredients?
That's of course a good question, and I think that here it is a matter of, you could say, educating the industry, and we all know that educating consumers is always a challenge. But in this case, I think it's important that not only the industry but also the regulatory bodies are actually going at the same time to inform and to make sure that people are informed accordingly. And secondly, that we can guarantee that products are really safe to be consumed. Yeah? So yes, the regulatory context is still challenging. There is still time before we go to the market. Nevertheless, from the first discussions that we've had with potential partners and potential customers, we see that there's really an eagerness to look into new technologies, new ingredients, because in the end, that transitioning is happening. And of course, a big part goes into communication. And this is also something that we as Paleo, which is a part of the puzzle, is doing to make sure that we bring healthy, tasty, of course, and nutritious products to the market.
Mm-hmm. Now we're going to get a bit more technical now. One milestone that stood out to me was your shift from liquid to powdered myoglobin. It's not just a technical tweak; it's a step change. So why was that an important step, Pierre?
I think that's something that really makes sense because, of course, if you look at our process, ultimately at the end of the process, we obtain a liquid. And then the next question is, okay, how can you store it? How can you use it? How should you handle it? One possibility was, of course, to go for frozen liquid, which means like ice, in the form of ice, to be able to store it over a longer period of time. But rapidly, from first discussions also here internally at Paleo, we realized that we need to find a solution for that, to work towards a powder. So of course, when we say powder, there are different aspects that are beneficial. The first is, of course, the stability. So we know that working with the powder brings benefits in terms of stability of the product over time. Secondly, the ease of use, of handling. It's a real benefit because, of course, managing or handling an ice block, so to say, is much more challenging than, of course, handling powders. And we've seen it also from the partners we work with, that's using the powder, which is a standard in the industry, makes total sense. And then, of course, the formulation flexibility. And this is a little bit the same to what I was saying. It's really the ease of use. When we go to our customers and partners, it allows them to use that powder at different steps in their process. And so it can be really in the beginning of their process, or it can be added on top. or even at the end, which is something that is much more convenient with a powder instead of using a liquid or for sure, a product in ice form.
And were there any technical challenges that you needed to overcome in making that switch from liquid to powder?
Yes. So what we obtained finally is a purified protein powder. So when you say this, you know that if you apply a drying technology, you need to make sure that your protein still has the right features which you expect to have before using it in a food application. So this was one challenge. For example, you need to make sure that in terms of color, that it maintains the color in the raw state. And so you don't want to have any alteration of the color. Just to give one example on that. Secondly, also particle size is something whenever you start working towards powders, the powder properties is something that is important. So these are all some of the technical challenges that we've overcome. And yes, I think today we are able to produce myoglobin powder form, which is of course a very good news.
And does that powdered version also help with practical aspects such as shipping or storage or shelf life?
Yeah. So thanks for raising this one, because yes, as I was mentioning, if you start to store or to ship liquid or frozen liquids towards storage, towards supply chain, this brings some challenges. It does exist, by the way. I mean, we all know that in the industry there is a lot of liquids and frozen products that are being shipped. But of course, we opt for the powder version, really to avoid the cold chain supply chain, which is costly, which brings some challenges. Because in the end, we also have the ambition from a commercial perspective, not only to operate around Belgium, so to say, but of course to go into the US and other markets like in Asia. And you can imagine that cold chain supply chain is even more challenging in this case.
Now, of course, the real test is how this performs in the hands of your partners. I understand that you've already begun initial customer trials. What can you share about those early results?
Yeah, of course, we will not share with whom we are actually collaborating. But yes, since the end of 2024, we've been actually going in discussions and also in going to do joint trials with several partners. And I call them partners because in the end, you could not really say that these are customers, because it requires a lot of goodwill from the industry to look into such a new technology and breakthrough ingredients. So for the looking at the food industry, we target business to business players. So it goes from distributors, it goes to favor houses, formulators, and also processors. And in addition to that, we also work with B2C manufacturers, which are in contact with retailers and food service. So I think it's important to mention that the plant-based industry is actually a multitude of players, and Paleo is in contact with several of these players. So this is talking about plant-based manufacturers. In addition to that, there is a regular exchange with universities and research institutes. So the importance is, of course, to make sure that the entire industry, going from manufacturers, really the industry, but also the academia, is looking into collaborations to make sure that at least the whole environment is aware about what is happening. And finally, as you might have seen, and this is of course known, we have collaborations with players like Revo Foods in Austria, on which we're really collaborating to make sure that we have the combination of we as an ingredient supplier or provider together with a producer of final product, really to help to bring products to specific markets and specific applications.
Now, you're not able to say who you're working with, but how do those partners react when they test your ingredient? Are you able to tell me that?
Yeah. Yes, there is, as I mentioned, a lot of goodwill, and it has been confirmed from those exchanges with those partners that there is a need to improve let's say, the taste profile from plant-based products. Nutrition is also an element that is very often mentioned, and color is also mentioned. So you see, we come back to really the features of myoglobin. They are aware that, yes, we need to overcome the regulatory hurdles. Nevertheless, the industry is actually eager to be aware, be informed about what is happening from an ingredients perspective, and vice versa. For us, really, the reason to enter in contact with those players is really to get first-hand feedback, because in the end, I think it's a dual approach where we provide insights, information, and support, but in the end, we need to make sure that we're on the right track. So it's really feeding also our research. It's helping the team to further optimize in terms of scaling up, and also in terms of costing. That's what's important, to get the feedback from those exchanges.
And before we come back to Hermes on commercialization, are there any particular product categories where your ingredient has really shined so far?
Yeah, so the focus today is in plant-based products. Yes, there is, in addition to that, as we all know in the industry, there's also the fermentation-based products. So there's also a demand from players in that space. And then when you come back to really the categories, it's specifically beef imitation, pork imitation, because as we know, myoglobin, I mean, it is something that contributes to color. So typically we go towards beef and pork imitation. Going to fish, you could say, yes, salmon does work with color as well, and tuna, just to take these as the main applications and products that myoglobin shows the best performance.
Mhm. Now, looking forward, every innovator in this space hits similar roadblocks, whether it's scale, regulation, or adoption. Hermes, what are the biggest hurdles that Paleo faces as you move closer to full commercialization?
Yeah, I think our challenge is quite similar to other precision fermentation companies. I mean, R&D is something that is challenging, but you solve it in the end, right? In a biotech company, food tech company, every day there is a hurdle, and next day or a bit later, it's solved. The business potential is there as well. We know that it works. So I'm really not concerned about the potential of myoglobin. We test it here, and that's the great thing. I mean, you have something that you can prove that it works. It tastes like meat when you add it to a plant-based product. If you ask me what keeps you awake at night, it's more the regulatory part of the story. And that's because it's a bit of a black box, right? I'm also concerned for Southeast Asia, Northern America. Of course, you still need to go through a whole process or procedure. But in the end, there are other companies that did it already, right? So it's pretty straightforward. In Europe, that's another thing. Although it's the biggest market for plant-based meats, hence also the ingredients for that, it's a bit, let's say, unexplored or not really mature, because the standards are so high for regulatory submission, and it's also very uncertain on timeline. So also there, in the end, we will get there. But the regulatory framework in Europe is really not encouraging innovation in our sector. So obviously, I hope that will change. Maybe due to the geopolitical situation, the all kind of dynamics that are going on. Maybe Europe will wake up, at least on a political level, that things might change on this. But that's currently our biggest challenge as for the whole sector.
Mhm. And more broadly, when you zoom out across the industry, are there any sort of technical or market-specific challenges that you think the industry should be more focused on? You discussed regulatory there.
Yeah, I think, of course, that for every company, there are different R&D challenges. I think we have quite an advantage compared to other companies, because we have a low inclusion, high impact ingredient. I hope that all my colleagues will succeed, of course, in reducing their cost of goods and commercialization. But I understand for instance, a cheese ingredient like casein, it's more challenging than for our products because cheese ingredients, caseins um, are present in cheese at a higher percentage. So it's quite challenging to produce that at a low cost level. We have a low inclusion product below 1%. So it means that you really need very few to have a high impact in a product. So that's of course an advantage on the R&D level. But I think in the end, all companies will overcome their challenges. I believe so.
Mhm. And now scaling is always the elephant in the room. How are you thinking about ramping up production to meet demand?
Yeah. Well, we have contracts with contract manufacturers, so it's also keen to make those deals in time. That being said, we of course see that if all these precision fermentation companies will succeed, then we will need more capacity. But also there are multiple initiatives ongoing to have that extra capacity. So I think in a few years we will have some extra scaling up capacity available for the sector.
Mhm. And Pierre, do you see other partnerships or even licensing as part of your route to market?
So for that, I would clearly see it more towards partnerships. Of course, you could say that a customer-supplier relationship is also a kind of partnership. For example, if you look at the Asian, Southeast Asia region, of course, you need to partner with dedicated distributors. And yes, in this case, these are specific partners. Of course, you can work with large industry players that do have already a presence in certain markets, in which case you also develop a partnership. Licensing, I mean, yes, this is also on our radar, but at this stage, this is something that is not clearly being developed. And so it's more in the domain of partnerships with potential customers, with industry players, and also distributors to make sure that the commercialization can go as fast as possible.
One thing that makes Paleo stand out is your positioning. You're the first European company producing non-GMO myoglobin. Why was that important to you, and how does it shape your go-to-market strategy, Hermes?
Yeah, the free of GMO aspect, as I said before, is something really important for the EU markets. So the EU market is challenging on a regulatory level, but once you pass that, it's an immensely big market with consumers that are in fact eager to eat, buy plant-based products that taste better than today. So it's a bit forward-looking. In fact, in a few years, when we would be able to hit the European market, that will be with a free of GMO product. And it's clearly a competitive advantage to any other company that would like to commercialize a similar product. Once it's free of GMO, it might still be challenging. It's always challenging in the EU, but it's way easier than when you have a GMO product.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about non-GMO positioning with customers, Pierre, how do you frame that, and why do you think it resonates?
Of course, yeah, to add to what Hermes is saying, that there is a clear distinction between how this is perceived in, let's say, the US compared to Europe. In Europe, consumers expect that items are free of GMO. In the US, there is the awareness that can be different. And of course, GM is allowed. Some consumers are actually really looking for products that are certified non-GMO. So typically, what we do in this case is that we rely to what is stated in the European regulation for warranting free of GMO. So that means that you can really make it very measurable. So we are, via our technology, as Hermes mentioned in the beginning, we can separate, let's say, the yeast from the myoglobin, and afterwards there are ways to ensure that we can say that or confirm that the product is free of GMO. Coming back to the question you asked earlier, it's really about guaranteeing that the product is safe, that is produced according to the regulation, and to be really transparent to our customers, partners, and also to the consumers.
Well, let's finish by having a look at the road ahead. Hermes, what's next for Paleo in the coming 6 to 12 months, say?
Yeah, good question, Nick. So I think our current focus goes to three topics. First of all, indeed, regulatory submissions in the key regions worldwide. So we are getting ready for that. Pierre is, of course, responsible for business development. So these trials that are so important, not to get customer relationships, but also to get information from commercial environments, because we learn also from that. And last but not least, third, it's an investment round. So we are currently raising a Series B. Challenging market these days, especially for plant-based meat. But then again, we have a product that works. So every time that I've candidate investors passing by the lab, and in a very strict environment, they can test it, they are convinced. So that's always the secret weapon. Just get them to our lab, and they can see that it works. So soon we will close that next funding round, being a Series B.
Well, you'll have to let us know about that as soon as it happens. Hermes, one final question. On a personal note, as a founder, what would success look like for you in building in this company?
I would be so happy, so proud if I go nearly anywhere in the world. I can go to a supermarket, I buy a very convincing plant-based product, including paleo myoglobin. Then I would be the happiest person in the whole world.
I'm sure it will happen. Hermes, Pierre, thank you very much for joining me and sharing all of those insights. It's clear to me that myoglobin is more than just a technical ingredient. It could be a real unlock for the next generation of plant-based foods. So I look forward to seeing how your journey continues. Thank you very much for taking part.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks.